Tarot Through Numbers, a guide to reading the Minor Arcana through the laws of numerical philosophy. Chapter 1. The Language of Symbols. There is a difference between knowing a symbol and understanding it. Most people who pick up a tarot deck for the first time learn meanings. The Tower means sudden change. The Star means hope. The Three of Swords means heartbreak. These are useful starting points in the way that a map is a useful starting point. But a map is not the territory, and a list of meanings is not the same as genuine understanding. The reader who has memorized meanings will give you a reading that sounds like a recitation. The reader who has internalized the symbols will give you a reading that sounds like someone who actually sees what is happening. The difference between them is not years of practice, though practice helps. It is the quality of attention they have brought to the symbols themselves. Consider how you come to know a place. You can read every guidebook ever written about Rome, study maps, memorize the names of streets and monuments, and still arrive in the city as a stranger. Or you can walk the same 3 neighborhoods for a week, get lost, find your way back, eat at the same cafe every morning, and leave knowing something real. The second kind of knowledge cannot be transferred through a list. It has to be built through encounter. Reading tarot is closer to the second kind of knowledge. What you are learning is not a code. You are learning a territory, and the territory is human life. This is the first thing worth understanding. Tarot is not a window outward onto fate or cosmic forces or the movement of planets. It is a mirror inward. When you lay out cards and begin to read, you are not describing the universe. You are describing the person in front of you, the situation they are inside of, the structure of what they are living through. The cards give you a vocabulary for that description. What you do with the vocabulary depends on how well you know the territory it maps. Naming has power. This is not mysticism, it is observation. When a person cannot name what is happening to them, they are at the mercy of it. The formless pressure, the unnamed dread, the recurring situation they cannot quite see clearly enough to address, these have power precisely because they have not been named. The moment something is named, the relationship to it changes. Not because the naming cures it, but because you now have a handle on it. You can look at it directly. You can begin to work with it honestly. Think of the difference between a vague physical discomfort and a diagnosed condition. The discomfort may have been present for years. You lived with it, adapted around it, perhaps avoided certain activities without fully knowing why. Then a doctor gives it a name. Nothing about the physical reality has changed. But now you know what you are dealing with. You can look it up. You can find others who have lived with it. You can make decisions about how to address it. The naming gave you access to the thing itself. This is what a well-done reading offers. Not prediction, not fate, not the revelation of hidden cosmic plans. It offers the name of what is actually happening. And once a person has the name, they can begin to work with what is real rather than what they imagined or feared or hoped was there. Numbers are a language for naming, not numbers as quantities, not 1 as the number that comes before 2, or 4 as the result of 2 plus 2. Numbers as qualities. Each number carries a specific quality of existence, a specific way that reality organizes itself. Understanding these qualities is the foundation of reading the Minor Arcana, because the 40 numbered cards of the deck are organized around exactly 10 of them. The reader's job, understood this way, is to know the territory so well that when someone describes their situation, or when the cards lay it out, you can tell them where they are. Not where they should be, not where they wish they were, where they actually are. This is useful. This is perhaps the most useful thing one person can offer another. A guide who has never left the city cannot help you in the wilderness. But a guide who knows the wilderness as well as they know their own neighborhood can tell you, when you describe what you see, exactly where you are standing, and what the paths forward look like from there. That is what we are building in this book, knowledge of the territory, precise enough to be genuinely useful. Before we begin with the numbers themselves, there is an exercise worth doing. Choose something in your life that has been troubling you, something you have been circling without being able to address directly. Write a single sentence that names it as precisely as you can, not the emotions around it, not the history of it, just the thing itself named plainly. Notice what changes when you have the name. Chapter 2. The Law of Unity. Every philosophy has to start somewhere. Every attempt to understand reality has to begin with at least one thing it is willing to take as given. The great Pythagorean insight was this: begin with the numbers. Not because numbers are more real than the things they describe, but because numbers are the clearest window we have into the structure of reality. The ancient philosophers organized their understanding of existence around what they called the decade, the 10 numbers from 1 to 10. These are not merely the first 10 integers. Each is a principle, a quality, a particular way that reality organizes itself. Together, they cover everything that can be said about anything that exists within time. The 10 numbers of the decade account for every finite thing. We will take them in order, and we begin necessarily with 1. Unity. The first thing that can be said about anything that exists is that it exists as itself, not as a collection of parts, not as a comparison to something else, but as this specific thing, distinct from everything else. A tree is not a forest. A person is not a crowd. A marriage is not a series of encounters. Each of these is a unity, something that, however complex, hangs together as one thing. This sounds obvious. It is obvious. And like most obvious things, it becomes interesting when you look at it carefully. To say that something is a unity is to say two things at once. First, that it is indivisible at the level at which we are considering it. The tree is one tree. You can cut it into pieces, but then you no longer have a tree, you have pieces of wood. The unity called this tree exists only as long as the tree exists as an integrated whole. The moment it is divided, the unity ends and something new begins. Second, to say that something is a unity is to say that it is distinct, that it is this thing and not that thing, that it has an identity which marks it off from everything else. The tree is not the rock beside it. The person is not the chair they sit in. Every unity is, by definition, itself and not anything else. This principle extends in an important direction. Every unity exists within a larger unity. The tree is a unity. It is also part of the forest, which is its own unity. The forest is part of a region, which is part of an ecosystem, which is part of the world. Each level of organization is a genuine unity in its own right, and each exists within a larger one. This hierarchy of unities is not a metaphor. It is the structure of reality. Everything that exists belongs to something larger and contains something smaller. For a reader, this immediately becomes practical. When someone comes to you with a situation, the first question is, what is the unity here? What is the one thing, the central organizing reality, that everything else in this situation is part of? A person in a troubled marriage may describe 100 different problems. Communication failures, competing priorities, resentments accumulated over years. But somewhere beneath all of that is one thing. One central reality from which everything else proceeds. The reader's job is to find it. Finding the unity does not mean oversimplifying. It means going deep enough to reach what is actually at the center. There is also an internal dimension to unity worth noting. Every unity contains within itself a kind of tension, the tension between what it wants and what it is capable of. These are not quite the same thing. A person may want to be generous but have not yet developed the capacity to bear the cost of generosity. An organization may want to serve its community but have not yet built the internal structure that makes consistent service possible. What a unity desires and what a unity can do are two different poles within the same thing. Understanding this tension is often the key to understanding what is actually happening in a situation. And then there is the zero. Before the sequence of numbers begins, the tarot places the Fool card 0. This is significant. 0 does not belong to the numbered sequence. It is not a smaller number than 1. It is a different kind of thing entirely. 0 represents what exists outside the finite order, the potential before it becomes actual, the traveler before they have chosen a road, the question before it has become an answer. The fool is not ignorant. The fool is not bound. The fool stands at the edge of the whole sequence, free from all of it, containing all of it as possibility. In a reading, when the aces appear, the ones of each suit, they represent the essential unity of the suit's domain in that situation. The one of coins asks, what is the central thing at stake here in terms of resources and exchange? The one of cups asks, what is the one true feeling beneath all the layers? The one of swords, what is the essential experience that everything else in this situation is organized around? The one of wands, what is the fundamental quality of what is being built or made? These are not small questions. They are the first question, and often the most important one. Exercise for this chapter. Take a situation in your life that feels complex or overwhelming, something with many moving parts, many competing demands. Sit with it quietly and ask yourself, if there is one thing at the center of all this, one thing from which everything else proceeds, what is it? Do not rush. The answer you want is not the first one that comes to you. It is the one that, when you finally name it, makes everything else make sense. Chapter 3. The Law of Opposition. Unity is visible because of what it is not. A thing can only be itself because it is not everything else. This is the second law, opposition. The clearest example is light and darkness. Neither can be understood in isolation. Light is not simply a quality that exists on its own. It is what darkness is not. And darkness is not simply the absence of light, it is the condition that makes light visible. Without darkness, there would be no contrast, no definition, no way to perceive the boundary of a lit space. The two define each other. Neither exists in any meaningful sense without the other. This principle extends to everything. Health makes sense because illness exists. Courage makes sense because fear exists. Generosity makes sense because selfishness exists. Every quality we recognize in the world is visible because its opposite gives it definition. There are two kinds of opposition worth distinguishing. The first is horizontal opposition, two things at the same level, each defined by contrast with the other. The married person and the unmarried person, the employed and the unemployed, the trusting and the suspicious. These are pairs existing side by side, each the counterpart of the other in the same domain. The second is vertical opposition, the relationship between levels of a hierarchy. The tree and the forest it belongs to are not simply different, one contains the other. The decision and the life it shapes, the moment and the years it is part of. These are oppositions of scale, of inclusion, of the relationship between the part and the whole. Both kinds of opposition matter in reading. When you see a situation, you see what is present, but the law of opposition asks you to also see what is absent, what is the counterpart of what is present, what exists on the other side of what you are looking at. And when you see something at one level, the law of opposition asks you to also see the level it is part of, and the level it contains. One of the most practically important applications of this law is the discipline of testing every judgment against its opposite. When you have reached a conclusion, ask, what would I think if I were wrong? What is the strongest version of the case against my conclusion? This is not weakness or indecision. It is precision. The judgment that has survived its opposite is more reliable than the judgment that has never been tested. There is a kind of error that happens when this discipline is absent. You hear one side of a story and it sounds convincing. The person in front of you is clearly suffering, and the cause they name sounds plausible. And so the obvious move is to accept the story as told and respond to it. But the story as told is always partial. The absent party has their own story. The situation as experienced by the person in front of you is not the same as the situation as it actually was. This does not mean the person is lying. It means they are human. Every human account is told from inside an experience, and the inside of an experience is not the whole of it. The reader who takes the law of opposition seriously will hear the story as told, and simultaneously hold open the question of what the other side looks like. not to contradict the person in front of them, but to see more completely. There is also something worth understanding about vice in this framework. A vice is not simply a bad quality. It is a quality that has risen above its proper level. Desire is not evil. Desire is the engine of action, the force that moves us toward what we need. But desire that has escaped its proper place in the hierarchy, that has climbed above judgment, above values, above the larger unity it is supposed to serve, becomes destructive. The problem is not the quality itself, but its location. It has risen to a position it was not meant to occupy. This is a useful lens for understanding patterns of behavior that keep producing bad outcomes. The question is not only what is driving this behavior, but whether the thing driving it is in its proper place. Is this person's desire for security serving their life, or has it climbed above everything else and begun to distort all their decisions? Is this person's need for recognition serving their development, or has it come to dominate how they spend their energy? The thing is not bad. Its position is wrong. When the twos appear in a reading, they bring the energy of the second law, tension between two sides, the pair that defines each other. The two of coins, the opposition between having and needing, between what is accumulated and what is spent. The two of cups, the two who see each other as counterparts, the meeting of one with its complement. The two of swords, the stalemate of two experiences that cannot both be true at once. The two of wands, the tension between what is possessed and what is still out of reach. Exercise for this chapter. Take a position you hold firmly, something you feel settled about, a judgment you have made about a person or a situation in your life. Now write the strongest possible case for the opposite position, not a strawman. The real opposing argument made as well as it can be made. You do not have to agree with it. You just have to make it honestly. Notice what you find. Chapter 4. The Laws of Relation and Reciprocity. The third law is relation. If the first law names existence itself, and the second law names the contrast that makes existence visible, the third law names something subtler, the thread that holds a unity together. Every unity that persists over time does so because something connects its parts. This is not obvious, but it is fundamental. A marriage is not simply two people who happen to be in the same building. It is a specific thread, a bond of meaning, history, commitment, shared life, that links those two people into a single unity called this marriage. The thread is the marriage. Remove it and you no longer have a marriage. You have two separate people who were once married. The third law makes a crucial distinction: necessary relation versus incidental contact. Two strangers stand next to each other at a bus stop. They are in proximity. They may even speak. But they are not related in the sense the third law means. Their presence in each other's lives is accidental, not necessary. Contrast this with the relation between a parent and a child, or between longtime partners, or between a person and the work they have committed themselves to. These relations are not incidental. They are constitutive. They are part of what makes each party who they are. Remove the relation and the parties are different, not just alone, but changed. The practical implication is this: when you look at a situation, the question is not only what is present, but what is the actual relation that holds it together? What is the thread? Where does it come from? How strong is it? Here is something that may surprise you. Every genuine relation is anchored in a belief, often an unconscious one. The relation between a person and their work is sustained by a belief, perhaps a belief that this work matters, or that they are capable of doing it well, or that it is what they were meant to do. As long as the belief holds, the relation holds. When the belief fails, the relation begins to dissolve. Often long before the person can name what is happening, they may continue to show up. They may continue to go through the motions, but the thread is already fraying. This is why understanding what belief underlies a relation is so useful. It allows honest work with the relation as it actually is, rather than as it is supposed to be. You can only tend a thread you can see. The fourth law is reciprocity. Where relation describes the thread, reciprocity describes the traffic on it. In any genuine relation, influence moves in both directions. Each party shapes the other. This is not optional. It is not something that happens sometimes or in particularly close relationships. It is the nature of relation itself. If two things are genuinely connected, they affect each other. The practical implication is important. You are never unchanged by the things you are genuinely related to. The work you have done, the people you have loved, the beliefs you have held, all of these have shaped you. And you have shaped them. The shaping is mutual and it is permanent. Even a relationship that has ended has left its mark on both parties. Even a belief that has been abandoned has formed grooves in the mind that held it. This creates something worth examining. When a person is in multiple genuine relations simultaneously, and those relations pull in different directions, the result is exhaustion, not laziness, not weakness. The specific exhaustion that comes from being genuinely demanded by more than one thing at once, with no clear hierarchy between them. The person who is equally committed to their work and their family and their own development and several significant friendships will feel a particular kind of depletion, not from overwork, but from the unresolved question of which relation is primary when they conflict. The resolution is not to reduce the number of relations. It is to establish a hierarchy. When the fundamental relation is named, when a person can say with honesty, "This is what my life is primarily organized around," this is the relation that takes precedence when others conflict, the exhaustion eases. Not because the demands decrease, but because the question of what to do when they conflict has been answered. There is also this. When a fundamental relation ends, the unity it sustained does not simply disappear. It transforms. The person who was one half of a marriage after the marriage ends does not return to being the person they were before. They are the person who was in that marriage and is no longer. The relation is part of them permanently, even in its ending. Understanding this, that relations leave permanent marks, that their ending is a transformation rather than a deletion, changes how we understand loss. It also changes how we understand the responsibilities we carry to the relations that have shaped us. When the threes appear, they carry the energy of relation. What is the thread? Is it intact? What belief is sustaining it? The Three of Coins, the relation between craft and the people it serves. The Three of Cups, the bond of celebration, the thread of shared joy. The Three of Swords, the relation that has been severed, the belief that broke. The Three of Wands, the relation between vision and its unfolding into the world. When the fours appear, they carry the energy of reciprocity. How is this affecting both parties? What is the traffic on this thread? The Four of Coins, what the holding of material security does to the one who holds it and to those around them. The Four of Cups, the reciprocal flatness of disengagement, what it does to the person who withdraws and to those they withdraw from. The Four of Swords, the reciprocal restoration of stillness. The Four of Wands, the mutual celebration of a threshold crossed together. Exercise for this chapter. Choose one relation in your life that is genuinely important to you, not one of obligation, but one that actually matters. Map it honestly. What is the thread? What belief is sustaining it? How has this relation changed you, not in the obvious ways, but in the ways you might not have noticed? And how have you shaped the other party? What does the traffic on this thread look like? Chapter 5. The Laws of Form and Harmony. The first four laws describe invisible structure, the fact that something exists, the fact that it has an other side, the thread that holds it together, the mutual influence between connected things. All of this is happening beneath the surface. The fifth law is where invisible structure becomes visible. Form is the appearance of a thing as it actually is, not how it presents itself, not how it would like to be seen, but how it genuinely looks when all the inner dynamics have worked themselves out. A marriage has a form, what the relationship actually looks like in practice, day to day. A person has a form, the shape their life has taken as a result of all the relations they have sustained and all the choices they have made. A crisis has a form, the specific way it is manifesting, which reflects everything underneath it. You cannot see the unity of a thing directly. You cannot see the relation that sustains it, but you can see its form. Form is the window through which structure becomes observable. It is tempting to think of form as something superficial, mere appearance, easily changed. But in the sense used here, form is anything but superficial. It is the result of everything that has been happening beneath it. When the reciprocal influences between two people in a relationship have been running in a particular direction for years, the form of that relationship will show it. When a person has been developing certain habits of thought and action, their form, the shape of their daily life, the quality of their attention, the way they carry themselves, will reflect that development. Form cannot be easily falsified because it is not chosen. It emerges. This is why form is such a useful concept in a reading. When you look at someone's situation clearly and without interference from what they wish were true, you are looking at its form. And the form tells you what is actually happening, not what was intended, not what was hoped for, but what the underlying dynamics have produced. If form is what a thing looks like, harmony is why it looks that way. More precisely, why it continues to exist in the form it has. Harmony, as the sixth law, refers to the internal coherence of a unified thing, the set of conditions, relationships, and balances that allow it to persist. Not harmony in the sense of peace or pleasantness. A harmful relationship can have its own harmony, in the sense that all its internal parts are functioning to sustain it. A body riddled with disease has a harmony of its own. What harmony means here is coherence. Everything inside is arranged in a way that allows the whole to continue. This is why the sixth law is said to close the laws of finite things. Everything that exists in time, every relationship, every institution, every living body, every arrangement of any kind has a harmony that sustains it, and the dissolution of that harmony is what ends it. Things do not simply stop. The conditions that held them together change, and a new arrangement, a new harmony, takes their place. There is a confusion that comes up constantly in readings, and the laws of form and harmony help explain it. When someone is in pain, they tend to focus on the pain itself. This is natural. Pain demands attention, but pain is almost never the actual problem. It is the signal that a problem exists. The ache is not the cavity. The anxiety is not the underlying situation creating it. The depression is not the loss of meaning that caused it. The symptom and the source are not the same thing. A painkiller removes the sensation without touching what produced it. For a while, this feels like a solution. The pain is gone, but what was causing the pain is still present, quietly developing. Ignore a cavity long enough and it becomes an infection. Ignore an infection long enough and it threatens the whole system. The same pattern appears in every domain of human experience. Someone treats the symptom, the surface form of the problem, and leaves the underlying dynamics untouched. The symptom may shift. It may move to another area, may temporarily subside, but the harmony that produced it is still in place. Until that changes, the problem has not really changed. A reader who understands form and harmony can help a person make this distinction. What you are describing is the form. What is actually sustaining this? What is the harmony underneath it? That question, asked clearly, is often the most useful thing a reading can offer. When a person addresses the form of a problem rather than its harmony, the problem rarely disappears. It migrates. A person who stops one compulsive behavior without examining what it was doing for them will often find another compulsive behavior taking its place. A relationship that ends without either party understanding what sustained it will tend to reproduce its essential dynamic in the next relationship. The specific form changes. The underlying harmony reasserts itself in a new container. This is not a flaw in the person. It is simply how harmony works. The conditions that created a particular form are still present. Until those conditions change, the form, or something functionally equivalent to it, will keep returning. The question worth sitting with is always, what is being served here? Not in a moralistic sense, but in a genuinely curious one. What does this behavior, this pattern, this situation actually do? What would stop if it stopped? What need would go unmet? Often, when a person can answer that question honestly, the problem becomes workable. Not easy, but workable, because now they are dealing with the actual harmony, not just its surface expression. A cup dropped on a stone floor shatters. What existed as one form becomes many fragments. This is not chaos. It is a transition from one harmony to another. The cup's harmony has been disrupted, and each shard has its own new form, its own coherence. Every ending works this way. A marriage that dissolves does not produce nothingness. It produces two separate people, each with a new form, each with a new harmony to establish. A career that ends does not produce emptiness. It produces a person in transition, a new harmony assembling itself. What looks like destruction is, at a deeper level, transformation. Exercise for this chapter. Choose something in your life that has a stable form, a relationship, a habit, a recurring situation. Describe its form. What does it actually look like in practice day to day? Then ask, what is the harmony underneath it? What conditions, balances, and relations allow it to persist in this form? What would need to change for the form to change? You are not looking for a judgment. You are looking for an understanding of structure. Chapter 6. The final laws: change, finality, and destination. The seventh law. The first 6 laws describe how a thing comes to exist and how it holds together. The seventh law describes what happens when it doesn't hold together anymore. The seventh law is sometimes called evolution, but not in the sense of improvement. There is no moral judgment here, no assumption that what comes after is better than what came before. Evolution, in this sense, simply means change of state, the moment when one form gives way to another. A standing person sits down, a marriage ends, an employment begins, a cup falls and breaks, a season turns. These are all the seventh law in action. A form that existed ceases to exist in that form, and a new form takes its place. This happens constantly at every scale. The difficulty is that we tend to experience state changes as disruptions, as problems to be solved or crises to be survived, when they are simply the normal operation of reality. Everything that has a form can change its form. The only question is when, and under what conditions. Every stable unity, every harmony, contains within it the seeds of its own transformation. These are sometimes called subversive factors, potentials that exist in a dormant state, waiting for the conditions that will bring them into action. A couple walks along the beach. He glances at someone passing. She notices. The subversive factors, his tendency to look, her sensitivity to it, were always present. They existed as potentials long before this moment. What the moment does is activate them. The harmony shifts. A new state begins. This is important because it means that what looks like sudden change usually isn't. The conditions for the change were already in place. The event that appears to cause the transition is more accurately described as the occasion that allows what was already present to become actual. Understanding this changes how you read transitions. When someone sits down with you in the middle of a major life change, a separation, a loss of work, a crisis of direction, the question is not only what happened, but what was already present that this event brought to the surface. The answer to the second question is usually far more useful than the first. Not all changes are equal. Some transitions occur within a particular context. Others change the context itself. This is the difference between the seventh and eighth laws. When a couple argues, a form changes. The harmony of the argument is different from the harmony of the piece that preceded it, but the marriage itself may remain intact. The context holds. When the marriage ends, a higher-order change has occurred. Not just a state within the structure, but the structure itself has transformed. Here is where hierarchy becomes practically important. Every situation exists within a larger context. A conflict at work exists within the context of a career. A career exists within the context of a life's direction. When you can see the hierarchy clearly, you can tell which order is actually changing, and that determines how significant the transition really is. Sometimes what appears to be a catastrophic change at one level is a minor adjustment at a higher level. Sometimes what appears to be a small shift at the surface indicates a fundamental reorganization at the root. The ability to distinguish between these is one of the most practically valuable things a reader can develop. The ninth law. There is a moment when change reaches its final form, when what was in motion comes to rest in a state that cannot be reversed. The clearest example is death. A person's life once ended has a final form. What that person did and was cannot be revised. The record is permanent, not because someone is keeping score, but because what enters into existence does not return to non-existence. What happened, happened. The past is not simply gone, it is fixed. But death is not the only example. Every moment as it passes acquires this quality. Yesterday's choices are today's permanent past. The conversation you had, the words said, the words not said has a form that will not change. The project you completed, the relationship you built, the harm you did or didn't do, all of it, as it passes into the past, becomes part of the irreversible record. This is not a grim observation. It is, in a certain light, a clarifying one. If what you do becomes permanent, then what you do matters, not in a pressure-inducing way, but in a dignifying one. The small acts of care, the moments of genuine attention, the choices made in private when no one is watching, these are not lost. They join the permanent record of what occurred. The 10th law. The first 9 laws describe what is. The 10th law points toward what will be, the direction of a life, the destination toward which all the smaller movements are trending. One way to think about this: you can often see where a person is going more clearly by watching what they consistently do than by listening to what they say they want. Stated intentions can be revised, denied, or contradicted. Habitual action over time reveals orientation. The person who says they want stability but consistently makes choices that introduce disruption is telling you something about their actual direction, even if they don't know it themselves. This creates a useful asymmetry in a reading. A person may have come to you asking about one thing, a specific decision, a particular relationship, a near-term question. But the 10th law asks a different question. Given everything you can observe about this person's patterns and movements, where is this person going? That question, answered honestly, sometimes reframes the specific question entirely. Human lives tend to organize themselves around a small number of fundamental orientations, not personality types, but directions of energy and meaning. Some people are fundamentally oriented toward creation and prosperity, building things, generating value, making the world more abundant. Others are oriented toward service and sacrifice, protecting what matters, standing between danger and those who cannot protect themselves. Others are oriented toward understanding and transmission, making sense of what is happening, and then explaining it to others in a way that helps them navigate. And some find meaning in being part of something larger than themselves, supporting those who create, protect, or explain. These are not fixed categories. A person may move between them, may embody more than one, may be oriented toward one and living in another. But when you are trying to understand where someone is going, asking which of these orientations is most fundamentally active in them is often the most direct path to an answer. Exercise for this chapter: set aside the specific questions you are currently carrying. Instead, ask this: based on what you have consistently done over the past several years, not what you have said or intended, but what you have actually done, where are you going? Write the answer honestly. Then ask, is this where you want to go? Chapter 7. The Court Cards: 4 Ways of Being Human. The numbered cards of the Minor Arcana map the deep structure of reality, how things come to exist, how they hold together, how they change, where they go. That framework applies to everything. The court cards operate differently. They are not numbers but characters, not abstract principles but living orientations. Where the numbered cards ask what is happening, the court cards ask who is this person, in this moment, in this situation. There are 4 court cards in each suit, and each corresponds to one of 4 fundamental ways that a human life can be organized, 4 directions that give a life its shape and meaning. The page, the servant. The page is the one who finds meaning through service to something greater than themselves. Not servility, not weakness or submission for its own sake, but a genuine, chosen orientation toward a cause, a person, or a purpose that they recognize as larger and more important than their own immediate comfort or advancement. The page's power is real, even if it appears subordinate. The choice to serve is always a choice, and in that choice lives a kind of sovereignty. The page has decided what is worth devoting themselves to, and that decision is their own. When the page appears in a reading, the question it raises is, what is worth serving here? Not what is demanded, not what is expected, but what genuinely deserves the investment of this person's energy and attention. The danger of the page orientation is losing oneself entirely in service, forgetting that the choice was always yours and that the capacity to choose remains. The page who no longer knows why they are serving or who they would be if they stopped has drifted from service into dissolution. The knight, the hero. The knight is the one who finds meaning through action on behalf of others, through sacrifice, protection, and the willingness to stand between danger and those who cannot stand for themselves. The heroic orientation is not about grand gestures or dramatic moments. At its most ordinary, it is the parent who works a difficult job to provide for their children. The friend who shows up when showing up is costly. The person who tells an uncomfortable truth when a comfortable lie would have been easier. These are acts of the same fundamental character as the larger, more visible sacrifices, the same inner movement toward responsibility, toward the willingness to bear a cost for someone else's sake. The knight does not calculate heroism. The knight acts. This is its strength and its vulnerability. The knight who pauses too long to analyze has already lost the moment, but the knight who never pauses will eventually charge into the wrong fight. The heroic orientation, poorly understood, can become martyrdom without purpose, a compulsive self-sacrifice that serves no one, least of all the person doing the sacrificing. The queen, beauty and fortune. The queen is the one who finds meaning through generating what is good, beautiful, and abundant, through the production of value in whatever form that takes. Beauty here is not merely aesthetic. It is the quality of what is genuinely worth having: health, prosperity, skill, delight, the things that make life richer for those who encounter them. The person who builds a thriving business, the cook who transforms simple ingredients into something nourishing and delicious, the artist who gives form to what others only feel, all of these are expressing the queen's orientation. The queen's energy is generative. It produces. It does not simply hold or protect or serve, it creates, and in creating it makes the world more beautiful. The danger of the queen orientation is the confusion of beauty with approval, mistaking what appears valuable for what is valuable, or becoming so attached to the production of what others admire that the deeper sense of what is genuinely worth creating gets lost. The king, wisdom. The king is the one who finds meaning through understanding and decision, through making sense of what is happening and acting on that understanding in ways that affect not just themselves, but those around them. The king does not necessarily have all the answers. Wisdom is not omniscience. What the king has is the capacity to distinguish what matters from what doesn't, to take the long view when the short view is screaming for attention, and to make decisions that hold up not just in the moment, but over time. The king appears at many scales. A person managing a household with wisdom is a king in that domain, as surely as anyone managing a kingdom. What makes the king is not the size of the domain, but the quality of the attention brought to it. The danger of the king orientation is the substitution of authority for understanding, the person who has learned to appear wise without doing the actual work of seeing clearly. The king who mistakes the performance of wisdom for wisdom itself eventually makes the decision that reveals the difference. In practice, these four orientations are never fully separate. A single act can be simultaneously heroic, wise, generous, and undertaken in service of something larger. The most integrated people draw on all four at different moments, and sometimes all at once. When you pull a court card in a reading, the card names the orientation that is most active or most relevant in that moment, the quality that most needs to be seen, understood, or developed. The reader's job is to take the orientation the card names and ask, how is this showing up? Where is it being expressed fully? Where is it being blocked or distorted? What would it look like if this orientation were functioning well here? Exercise for this chapter. Think of a situation in your life right now that involves other people. For each person significantly involved, including yourself, ask, which orientation is most active in them at this moment? Are they serving something? Are they protecting or sacrificing? Are they generating and creating? Are they trying to understand and decide? You are not looking to label anyone. You are looking to see the situation more clearly. Chapter 8. The Four Suits, Four Ways of Reading a Life. The four suits of the Minor Arcana are not metaphors pointing to something else. A sword is a sword. A coin is a coin. A cup holds something. A staff is made of wood. The meaning begins with what each object actually is and what it actually does, and from that direct, concrete reality, everything else follows. Stay with the object. Ask what it does. The depth of understanding you can reach by taking the symbol seriously on its own terms is greater than anything you will find by translating it into something else. Sword's experience as mark. A sword cuts. When a blade crosses skin, it leaves a wound, and when the wound heals, it leaves a scar. The scar is the record of what happened. It remains long after the pain has faded, sometimes long after the memory of how it was made has blurred, sometimes even when the memory is entirely gone. The mark persists. This is the suit of swords, experience as something that permanently marks. Not all cuts are painful. A surgeon's incision is precise and intentional, and what follows from it may be healing. A child learning to walk falls and scrapes their knees. The scrape is the price of acquiring the skill. What makes an experience belong to the suit of swords is not suffering but depth. Something happened, and it left a trace in the person who lived through it. Even experiences that leave no conscious memory leave their mark at a level below memory. The person shaped by years of instability carries that instability in how they move through the world long after the circumstances have changed. The person who grew up surrounded by genuine care carries that security in how they approach other people, often without knowing it. Consider, a child whose parents loved each other openly and generously carries something different in their body, their assumptions, their emotional reflexes than a child whose parents were in constant conflict. Even if neither child can articulate what they carry, even if the adult they have become has never examined it directly. The experience marked them. The suit of swords is about finding that mark, nomming it, and understanding what it has made. When swords appear in a reading, the questions they open are, what has this person been through that is still operating in them? What experience is still an open wound? What has already healed and become scar tissue, still present, but no longer raw? What is being lived right now that will leave its permanent mark? Coins, the intermediate, the exchangeable. A coin is not what you ultimately want. It is what you use to get what you want. Almost no one wants money for its own sake. They want what money can become: security, freedom, the ability to provide, the conditions that allow them to live as they intend. Money is the medium. The suit of coins is the domain of mediums. This extends well beyond currency. Time is a coin. Effort is a coin. Reputation, attention, skill, favor, All of these are things we accumulate, spend, and exchange in the pursuit of what we actually value. A person who accumulates money compulsively, hoarding it, unable to spend it even on things they genuinely need, is almost never in love with money itself. Look more carefully, and you will usually find a need for security, the deep belief that if something goes wrong, they need to be prepared. The money is not the goal. The security is the goal. The money is the coin being accumulated in service of a psychological state. Once you see that, you understand both the person and their relationship to money more clearly. When coins appear in a reading, the questions are, what is the medium of exchange here? What is being accumulated and toward what end? What has been spent, and was the exchange worth it? What does this person treat as their most fundamental coin, and do they know what they actually want it for? Cup's interior direction. A cup holds something. It is shaped for depth and containment. It receives and keeps. What it holds is fluid. Water takes the shape of whatever contains it and carries that fluid from one place to another. The suit of cups represents the interior life, emotions, feelings, desires, beliefs, and above all, the direction that these interior states reveal. Emotions are not decorations on top of a life. They are signals. When something consistently produces a bad feeling, a low-level dread, a recurring flatness, a sense of wrongness you cannot quite name, that feeling is telling you something real about the relationship between what you are doing and what you actually believe is worth doing. A person who feels shame in their work is not simply having a bad day. The shame is information. It says that what they are doing is in conflict with their sense of what they should be doing. The emotion is the compass. It points. The direction of a life is often more legible in the emotions than in the stated plans. People regularly say one thing and feel another. A person who claims not to care about recognition, but experiences genuine pain each time their work goes unnoticed, is telling you something true in the feeling that they are not yet telling you in the words. The cups do not lie in the same way that words can lie. When cups appear in a reading, the questions are, what is this person actually feeling beneath the explanation they have prepared? What does that feeling indicate about the direction they are moving? What belief is generating this emotional state? What would shift if the belief shifted? Wands, the quality of what is made. A staff is cut from a living tree, from something that grew, that had life in it. And wood is not all the same. There is wood that lasts centuries, that resists decay and pressure and time. And there is wood that splinters, that rots, that gives way. An old door made from cedar is still solid 100 years later. A piece of modern particle board begins to fail in a decade. The quality of the material is everything. The suit of wands represents the quality of what is made, built, or developed. Not what something is worth in trade, but what it is. Its substance, its durability, its actual value. This applies to everything a person has, makes, or becomes. A skill is a material. Is it genuinely developed, or is it a surface competence that will fail under real pressure? A relationship has material qualities. Is it dense and durable, or superficial and prone to decay? A person's character has material qualities. Is it genuinely formed over years of honest effort, or is it a performance that will break down when actually tested? The distinction between quality and quantity lives here. You can have a great deal of something and still have very little if what you have accumulated is not genuinely valuable. Wands ask not how much but how good, and they ask it of whatever is actually present. When wands appear in a reading, the questions are, what is the actual quality of what this person has or is building? Is this genuinely durable, or will it not hold? What would it take to improve the material, not just to acquire more, but to develop what is already present into something of real value? Each suit asks a different question about the same life. Swords ask, what has marked this person? Coins ask, what is the medium of exchange here? Cups ask, where is this person actually going? Wands ask, what is the actual quality of what is here? A situation never lives in only one suit. What the suits provide is angles of entry, a way of asking which dimension of the situation is most alive, most in need of attention, most illuminated by the number the card carries. The suit tells you where the law is operating. The number tells you how. Exercise for this chapter. Choose a situation in your life that has weight, something you are genuinely thinking about or working through. Then ask it 4 ways. From the sword's angle, what past experience is still operating in this situation? From the coin's angle, what is the actual currency at stake? What are you spending and what are you trying to acquire? From the cup's angle, what are you actually feeling about this, beneath the explanation you have given yourself? From the wand's angle, what is the actual quality of what exists here? Is it genuinely solid, or is it holding together by appearance? You are not looking to resolve the situation. You are looking to see it from all 4 sides at once. End of the Minor Arcana. Ian Duafefili.